I've built a few Gauge 1 live steam locomotives so far. This is the next one I'm going to build, and it's going to be scratch built and it's going to be live steam, and I hope you find the series of following videos interesting to watch. Hello and welcome to the second in the series of the Gauge 1 Prairie tank locomotive build. Okay, we saw the start of the frames build, and where we cut the buffer beams and we got those ready to fit in the frame. One of the next things to really do on the frame is to start thinking about getting the wheels mounted, and in order to do that, the next thing I've started working on is the suspension, and you can see them there. I've started working through these, and these are basically the suspension bearings. And also made some small, I think they're called axle keeps, and these fit on here to hold the bearing in position. So as you can see, here's some I did earlier, and I shall be working through to do the others on the other side. So what we're going to do, what I'm going to show you now is really just the next stage, just how we fitted the axles, how they're fixed in the frames. And hope you can see here, I've drilled a little spotted hole through, and that's been drilled through from here. So the axle bearing is held in position, and we just spot a little hole through there, through onto the axle block. So what I have to do now is just drill and tap this little axle box. So we need to very carefully now drill this, the hole that we spotted through on. We now need to drill this with our 10B8 tapping drill, and I shall just set the depth. I need to go all the way through. Go a good 3/8 down. That should do. So we can drill our tapping hole now. So you can see there we've drilled through. And it's quite important that this face sits exactly on there. So we don't want that being in an angle. It's got to be held in there like so. You might be wondering whether this is a little bit of overkill, having suspension on such a small locomotive, but it does make a difference how well they ride on the track. Certainly with these suspension bearings built in. I have built Gauge 1 locomotive in the past where there's no suspension, and they certainly will find every lump and anomaly on the track, and can be very prone to derail because there's nothing to take the knocks as it goes over any discrepancies. So it's well worth having suspension on them. Ready to tap these now, and just get our first tap ready. 10B8 taps, they're pretty fine, and this is about as fine as I like working with. You only have to look at them sideways, and they're quite easy. It's very easy to break one of these. I have seen some designs I actually use 12BA, and they are so fine. This is the most trickiest part. Very carefully, a few turns, unscrew the thread, and just unblock, just take out the metal, the swarf, the waste that folds in the bottom of the thread, and we just continue very slowly. Again, just to empty out the waste that builds up at the bottom of the hole. This is a blind hole, so it's not going all the way through, so that needs to be just unblocked every time. Let's get down to the bottom again now. Right, that's at the bottom of the thread, so that's okay. Now we just use the third tap, the second tap, which is a plug tap. Sometimes taps, you used to see them, they used to come in three, which was a taper, a secondary and a plug tap. But I think the secondary tap is really, I tend not to see it very often now. When you buy a set of taps, you usually only get the taper tap and the plug tap, so you don't really see coming as three taps anymore. A plug and a taper tap seems to work fine. So this is cutting the final thread gently. So this, I can still feel it taking more metal off. And I start to hear that squeak, and the way the camera's picked it up, that tells me now it's probably getting a bit tight. I'm probably ready to unblock, get the waste cuttings out the hole again. Nearly at the bottom now. It's nearly there. I can just feel that. It's always tempting to say one more turn, and then you can do one more turn, and that's the turn that will end up snapping the thread, snapping the die, snapping the tap into the thread, and that is a pain. The only real way is we're going to have to start again and make a new component. So there it is, drilled and tapped. Well, there's the latest axle bush in position, and I've just had a look at my little springs drawer, and I've got some suitable springs that's going to do the job we want. It's surprising actually, over the years you build up quite a selection of various size springs. What I've started doing as well, I've almost bought some like standard spring sizes. This is the long, this is a length about 1 metre, and these are sort of the common sizes of compression springs that you tend to use maybe for safety valves, or in this case suspension. So the nice thing is you can just cut a little length off that you want, and off you go. Also got larger size as well that come in handy for other applications, and you can buy them in individual lengths. There's several companies that you can order the sizes from, and they're quite useful. I've got, I say, a whole selection of various sizes of springs that I bought over the years. So we have a suitable spring that will do the job for what we want. This looks like an offcut from a. This is probably an offcut from a longer length, but it's just the right length that we want for this particular job. And place a little washer on, little 10BA washer. Put the nut on. I mean, these are going to be taken apart several times during the course of the build of this locomotive. But this is their first tryout. Get that washer on again. Now if you can imagine what a 12 BA little nut would look like, it will be a tiny little thing. There we are. That's now screwed on to match our others. So here we are with our springs mounted. Now you may be wondering, so look, that flaps around a little bit. I've done designs in the past where you actually mill a slot in here, so it's anchored both ways. But I've also done locomotives that uses this method, and this method works perfectly well. So I decided on this locomotive to use this method rather than mill a slot where there's a, if you like, a flange either side to keep it in position. Once the axles are in, these won't flap around, these will stay. And so this method works fine, which is what I'm going to do on this particular one. I'll just show you how I do the riveting on these. Just an interesting little process. It might be interesting for you to see that. So for these axle keeps, how they started life is from a piece of brass angle. How they started, and then we cut them to length. So get them cut to length and marked out the drill positions where they're going to fit. And the next thing we did, once we've marked them to length and drill the holes, spotted the position for the holes to go to where these fit on the frame, we then filed out the clearance. This axle bush has to sit down there, so we have to cut and file this out. And the other thing I had to do was just reduce this thickness here, so it's the same as this little flange here. So when it sits in, when it's in the axle frame, it's all level, like so. There's no interference. It's quite interesting on this brass angle. This is supposed to be 90 degrees, and normally you don't really hit a problem with it. But what I've found with this stuff, I think maybe the manufacturing, I think it's cold rolled. Someone will correct me if I'm wrong. What I tend to find is this is never quite 90 degrees. There's sometimes always a little slightly out. So when you come to put it against a face, you sometimes a gap. So what you have to do, or what I've done, is once you cut your length, is give it a gentle squeeze or a tap with a hide mallet just to open out. It's just a little thing I've discovered working with this brass angle. And you can actually buy, sometimes you come across this that's milled 90 degrees in certain applications, and they are spot on, and they can be expensive, but this is the everyday bread and butter brass angle that I use. So I've made the cutout. So we have our cutout that's made. The next stage is now we're going to fit this onto the frame like so, and then we'll rivet it on. And I can just show you the riveting process, and it'll be the same riveting process we'll be using through the whole build of this locomotive, but I'll show you one example of how I do the riveting. You can see we've got the hole drilled now, and we've got that drilled through onto our main frame. So what I've just done now is popped a copper rivet in, just trimmed it a little bit short to what we want, and now we can begin to rivet that in. And with the riveting, it's just gentle taps, is the best way. It's not one almighty swipe at it. Gentle taps. And what I did also on the hole on the brass hole retainer, I put a little countersink on there, just a little point where the rivet can be riveted into. Gentle tap that down. And you can see that there now, that's our rivet. So now all I need to do is spot through and drill the other hole and rivet that one into position. Here's the suspension completed now. I've done both sides, as you can see. And also at this stage, it's always a good idea, what I've done, you can see I've just labelled this up outer, so I know I've got the frames the right way round, because I've fallen foul of this before. At this stage it's quite easy to get mixed up whether you're working on the left hand side or the right hand side, and sometimes you can do something or drill a hole in the wrong frame or on the wrong side, and you have to do it all again. But now you get the idea how that's starting to come together. The next thing we'll probably look at is going to be the wheel axles and the wheels. So hopefully see you then.